Welcome back. So this is the BP Pulse panel. This is our 8th panel. And this is about the future of on-the-go networks. It's a panel sponsored by BP Pulse. Who have we got? So we've got Akira Kirton. Akira, hello. Vice President of BP Pulse UK. Relatively new in the role, I think. How long?
18 months. Yeah.
18 months. So, yeah. So, a good while then, really, one way or the other. Aaron Berry is Deputy Head Energy and Infrastructure at OZES of the DFT. Aaron, I hope I've said it right, haven't I?
You have.
Yes, yep. Marvellous. And then at the end we have Nina Sutton. Nina is Programme Manager at Severn, Trent. So if you'd like to give our panel a big round of applause to begin with, please. Thank you. Kira, would you like to give us a sort of opening flavour of things before we get into the chit-chat panel stuff? So
absolutely, Roger.
Over to you.
I think well done, Nina, because I think you need Pilates or something to be able to sit in this seat and hold yourself with that posture. So I'm going to
sit right back. I'm
going to go forward rather, so lean in rather than lean out. So Akira Kirton, delighted to be here, and I'm going to steal the joke from Nina, but this was meant to be a fireside chat, and it's absolutely Baltic in here. So well done. Well done for attending, and really great to see so many in the audience. The other bit, I guess, there's so much light in all of our eyes, we can't see any of you, right? So I think that's really great for those who have fear of actually being an audience. But more importantly, more serious, I guess, a little bit of framing, and then really we just want to have a really good dialogue with all of you and ask questions, right? So the framing is really about just macro context, where are we in the world? 2, a little bit around our frame as BP Pulse, but 3, just set the panel up in regards to just thinking about what are we doing in on the go and why is fleet so important when we talk about the EV transformation and transition we're all on, right? So I guess the first point is, 2 or 3 years ago, we might have been saying we're at the tipping point, right? Or we're going to accelerate further. And 2 or 3 years ago, people were still talking about range anxiety at these conferences, right? So I guess a couple of things. One, who here drives an EV? Brilliant, majority audience. How many conferences have you been? Hands up who's been to 2 conferences this year? 3, 4. Okay, so you've probably got most of the macro trends, right? So it'll be quite quick. 7, all right, there you go. More, right? So, all right, so I think we all know most of the mega trends, right? But I guess the first one is quite simple. It's just about demand, right? So demand for EVs just grows and grows and grows, both at a global scale and certainly in the UK, right?
Yeah.
You can see the SMMT data. We're 50% up on BEV vehicle purchases, and we're usually 20 to 30% on a monthly basis of all new cars bought, right? So one, demand is there, demand is growing, and it continues to grow. Frankly, by 2030 in the UK, we'll be 30 to 50% EV. By 2040, 70, 90%, right? Supply. Supply is so important. We talked about this beforehand, right? So $1 trillion. 1 trillion is what the OEMs have committed on the supply side to actually meet our needs from an EV perspective, right? So supply is there, demand is there. The third bit's really about, and this is where the panel goes into, is infrastructure, right? So how do we collaborate together, work as industry, government, cross-sector in order to really drive the infrastructure in place to make sure EV is easy and ultimately we have the right speed for right need for all charging types, right? And that's really the focus of today's panel and discussion, the questions we'd like to frame today, right? From a BP perspective, EV is one of our 5 growth engines. We announced that as part of our net zero ambition 2 years ago. So absolutely, we are all in on EV, both globally and certainly in the UK. You saw $1 billion. $1 billion is our commitment over the next 10 years. And it's really focused on the go, rapid and ultra-fast charging. That's where we're seeing the vast majority of our charging. So that's creating awesome dedicated EV charging hubs, a bit like we're doing with Reza and EVN in terms of what we're going to be announcing. And we have around some NEC in the Birmingham. We're really going to be launching a number of landmark sites over the next couple of years and really, as long as our forecourt offering, expanding our network and growing it in huge capacity over the next 10 to 20 years. But the other bit is really important, that's kind of where we're focused today, is on fleets, because fleets are actually really driving the transition, right? So, we've partnered with Royal Mail, with Hertz, with Uber and others, but they're actually driving the next step in terms of how we're kind of moving forward. There's some elements of we've got to create dedicated fleet hubs, but also we've got to democratize what we're actually kind of doing in terms of at home, on the go, and destination, and really work towards what's the energy savings, cost optimization, and frankly, the engagement with government around how do we drive dynamic pricing, regional pricing, et cetera, in order to both meet the infrastructure needs, but also fleet needs as we move forward. So absolutely delighted to have Nina on board to talk about Severn Trent and the fleet activities, and of course, it'd be great to hear from Aaron just some thoughts around dynamic pricing, load shifting, and all the kind of stuff we all need to actually meet the needs of the customer in the future, right? So that's my really quick rundown in the frame. I think over to Hugh for questions.
Yeah, great.
I'd like to be here.
No, and indeed, again, as always, please, if you have questions, reflect on them for the moment. June will come around with a microphone if you're here. If you're watching this online, please let us know your questions, and Scott, who is somewhere, will tell me what they are. That's good. But yeah, thank you for that context. So on that point then, Nina, of fleets and the importance of, every single customer is important, but if you've got one fleet customer that controls a large number of vehicles, getting that right, really pushes things forward very fast. So can you give us a quick flavour then of where Severn Trent is then in the journey towards getting a fully electrified fleet and dealing with the principal challenge of charging?
Yeah, sure. So I'm leading the decarbonisation of the fleet across Severn Trent. We've got circa 2,500 vehicles. We committed back in 2020 for our company cars that we would only replace company cars with electric vehicles, which we've been doing since that point. We obviously at that point had to take a very early decision around what we were going to do with the provision of charging. So the charging infrastructure that we've provided for our company car users, I think we took the same route as most people have. We took the low-hanging fruit to begin with. So we know that 40% of our customer base can't have home charging units because they don't have off-road parking, they live in accommodation that just doesn't allow that. So yeah, we've taken the first step on the easy route to provide the electric vehicles to people who can have home charging. However, what we've done since that point is that we have started to develop our own depot charging infrastructure. So we've got over 2,500 sites at Severn Trent, some that are very heavily populated, some that are working depots, workshops, but some that are just unmanned and heavily secured. So we have a very, very diverse need for our infrastructure. We started out on a path last year of installing 352 charging units across our depots. And the way that we designed that was by looking at our knowledge of where we were going to grow our operational fleet that was going to be translating into EVs, and that's our commercial vehicles. And we are continuing to build that. We've done that very much internally, we've done that very siloed, but now is the time as we're starting to look towards our plan, because by 2030 we are committed through our EV commitment to EV 100, that we will be completely decarbonised by that point for all of our vehicles. So that's for company cars, our commercial light vehicles, our HGVs, our 4x4s. As long as there is a vehicle available, we are going to ensure that we decarbonise that. Only 2 weeks ago, we had our strategy signed off, so we know that we're going to do it. We've got the funding to do it, and now we're on the first step of making it really happen. We've just gone out to tender for some of our vehicles, so we know that this year, in the next 12 months, we're going to be replacing another 600 of our vehicles with electric vehicles. That is a challenge in itself, because for every user case we have, it's a very different user case, different requirement for vehicles, but again, it's a very different requirement for the charging solution as well. Because of the geography that we work in, because of the way in which we have depot start, we have home start, we've got to look at every single type of provision that either a single supplier or multiple suppliers can provide us to be able to ensure that we can keep our vehicles on the road for the most maximum amount of time. And that is what is absolutely paramount to us. It's vehicle on road time, it's our response times to customers, and it's our ability to deliver a solution that is both practical for the business, but also practical for the user. And that's a really, really difficult balance. And then you've got the whole remuneration piece that goes around it. So. Yeah,
well, thank you for that. But can I sort of, just kind of said it, but as a supplementary question, there's the management strategy, there's the brand strategy, Severn Trent strategy, but what about the drivers themselves? How bought into this initiative are they? Do they want it, believe it? And we talked earlier on about education and stuff. What about the drivers of the vehicles? How focused are you on that?
Very much so. For us to be able to be successful in our transition, we have to take our users on a very, very strong cultural change programme. And our people programme around this is very much around communicating and managing what is very recognised around the anxiety of changing to EV. You have the range anxiety, you have the anxiety about the maturity of the vehicles and the technology, the ability to have not just the range, but when you've got auxiliary power that is required to run tools, etc., on the back of the van, are we still going to be able to do the ways of working that we were in the way that we work at the moment? There is a lot of anxiety, and the way that we're approaching that is by ensuring that we have user groups. So we have engaged with every single part of our business to ensure that they have a voice at the table, so that when we're designing the solution isn't designed to them, it's designed with them.
That's really good to hear. That honestly, I think that's pretty pivotal. Aaron, I'm really pleased that what used to be known as OLEV, the Office of Low Emission Vehicles, is now the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles. That's definitely a good move forward. But you're Deputy Head of Energy and Infrastructure. It's a DFT Department of Transport. So ultimately, the Prime Minister is your boss. But let me ask you this question. I don't want to get you into any trouble, but if you were the Prime Minister, how would you make EV charging a reality? If you're now in number 10, I mean, it can happen because look, a few people have had it this year. It could be you, Aaron. What would you do?
Well, I think it's worth reflecting on what we have done over the course of the last year, not least in March. So producing the EV infrastructure strategy, where we set out a sort of very clear vision for what was required. So the broad number of charge points that we need to achieve by 2030, sort of consumer experience that we need to get to in terms of reliability, ease of payment, data sharing, so we know that the charge points are working. A big capital commitment to EV infrastructure, so the local EV infrastructure fund, which is something I'm particularly responsible for, to make sure that the third of people without access to off-street driving actually will have access to charging infrastructure on their streets or in the nearby local car parks, etc. A commitment to the strategic road network, so 950 million of capital funding allotted to ensuring that across our motorway service areas, that we have charging infrastructure and the sort of the massive increase that we need over the course of the next decade. Something like a tenfold increase in 8 years. It's enormous. And what I think underpins this, coming back to your question more than anything perhaps, is that the commitment to the phase out in 2030 and the legislative means to get it. So the ZEV mandate coming in 2024, which the government will be setting out its sort of trajectory for that uptake of vehicles over that period, is probably the most important aspect. So that the area of certainty, I think, giving some level of market certainty is really key to planning that infrastructure. And I think in the past, we've talked about in the sidelines of the conference, the sort of the margins of certainty are increasing, right? A few years ago, we were saying, well, is it going to be hydrogen? Is it going to be electric? There's lots of questions in that area. Do we really, are local authorities really responsible for ensuring local infrastructure? I think that is more and more certain. It's more and more clear. The vehicles are going to be there. We are going forward with primarily an electrified, certainly car and motorcycle and van fleet. So we need to plan for it. So I think providing that ongoing certainty and the ZEV mandate and the uptake, I think, is probably the most important of all.
It's good to hear that you're so positive on that, and there are specific metrics, and one could be cynical and say, and there is money now coming behind it, which is all good. Quick supplementary question. Would you like to be the Prime Minister? No, I'm only joking. Yeah, good. Akira, now, BP, there's been a school of thought with some of the oil companies now coming into charging of, a little bit of maybe doubt, maybe a bit of suspicion, whatever. But given that you're so good at moving energy around and understanding distribution and infrastructure, what do you think is, if there's a really big challenge or something you'd like to overcome to do this all more quickly? I don't want to answer my own question, but is it in things like the sort of the paperwork, if you like, the whole process of licensing or, approval stuff and all the rest of it? What needs to happen to make things happen quicker in line with Aaron's timelines? And
yeah, absolutely. And we've got really good engagement with both local but also broader government. And I agree, rapid charging fund, Levi funding is just brilliant in terms of trying to turbocharge things. I think headline level in terms of, we made a commitment 2 years ago as a company that we'd go net zero by 2050, right? Yeah. Actually, in the UK, we're absolutely going gangbusters turbocharging that. So £18 billion commitment for the UK which $1 billion is on EV. But actually, you can't be net zero unless you invest in offshore wind, hydrogen, and other aspects. So it's an integrated aspect of that as we move forward. It's probably the same for all vectors, right? And we are working absolutely with government around that. And it's about land, power, and pace, right? And you know, I think all of us probably in the same boat here, right? So what do we mean by pace? You know, we've had planning applications 6 months for 6 inches of cabling, right? So what does that mean? With 6 inches of cabling that wasn't on our land, on a adjoining land, it took 6 months, right? So
why does it take 6 months?
That doesn't work for everybody, right? So well, what would be my magic wand? One, just designate EV and what we're trying to do as national critical infrastructure, right? That would single-handedly be the most effective way of accelerating what we're trying to move forward on. And second is just really work with us around finding great land and actually accelerate the power grid upgrade, because that can be a 9 to 12 months reality. Now, the great news is really with the DNOs, with government and others, we're all working that through, right? So this isn't a vent fest or a wind fest, right? But those two things will actually transform our path to net zero, both as BP, but more importantly for the UK and for all of us. Right?
Aaron, as Prime Minister, can you do that designation for us?
Sure, no problem. Get right on it.
Yeah, okay. So again, coming back to sort of the pace of change, just sticking on this from BP Pulse, how much have you invested in it, and how much do you intend to do it? You know, you're all in on EV, as you say, but is that now at the board level, the strategic level? Does that manifest in like really large sums of money coming in? Because this is all eye-wateringly expensive, isn't it?
Well, I guess we're all in, but I think society's all in to net zero, right? So, and I guess the great thing is, you know, if you go to our investor calls these days, 40 to 70% of all questions are around our growth engines, right? So our growth engines is how we're actually reframing ourselves as business: hydrogen, biofuels, electrification, convenience, and EV, right? So by 2025, 40% of all our capital is towards those growth engines. So the entire business, the entire company is transforming. And most of I was at the board in September doing our review, most of, not just the board, but actually the investor conversations and questions are about the growth engines.
Good. And Aaron, can I ask you, looking at the perspective then of, you know, the energy shift as well. We've got these huge shifts now between energy moving to renewable, a decentralized grids proposition, if we can get there, at the same time that we've got a new mobility, new vehicle transition. How do you see those two things coming together? Are they melding together nicely, or are they kind of crashing into each other a bit?
Well, they're not crashing. I think there's certainly a challenge in that space. So we're electrifying not just transport, but heat as well. And we're moving to renewables at the same time. So we're needing to generate more and more electricity renewably, so the wind farms and so on and so forth. So there's an undoubted challenge in this space. I think what's really important is that the certainty that we have, so the 2050 target of net zero, 2030 phase out of electric vehicles, working out what it is that we need is becoming easier and easier. And what does industry typically ask for? It's certainty, market certainty. Well, that certainty is increasingly coming, which makes it easier to plan for. Right. So the better we get at sort of collaborating, to pick up on the point earlier about the importance of collaboration, the more we can talk to each other about, okay, well, we've got leaseholds in this area, this is how many vehicles that we're going to have over the coming period. You talk to the local council and let them know that, okay, we've got at least these many EVs over this period, and then you can start paying the infrastructure as well. So collaboration is also important.
Nina, given you had that full engagement with the end users, the drivers of vehicles, is there anything that's perhaps come out that we're missing? So we've got, you know, on-street charging, we've got, you know, public charging, home-based charging. Has anything come out of someone saying, well, why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? Anything that you've heard of as like an idea that we're not putting into practice yet?
Yeah, so the thing that concerns the users is the fact that they are obviously very operationally focused. Yeah. And for them to be able to charge their vehicle, if they don't have a home charging unit or they're out and about on the road, they have to use public infrastructure. Now, there's no prioritisation at the moment in a public infrastructure environment, say McDonald's, you know, Sainsbury's, Lloyd's, gym, whichever, for them to be able to go. And if they're part of the critical national infrastructure, so it could be a blue light, You know, if we're on an emergency call out, there's no way that they can jump a queue. They also then have to sit and wait in a car park somewhere. Brand damage comes to mind straight away because, you know, you see a queue of Severn Trent vans outside McDonald's at a lunchtime.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to go down
Yeah,
very
no,
well
I
in the
can- I
Daily
see what you
Mail, is
mean.
it? I mean, let's be
Yeah.
honest. So that is a real concern for them at the moment. And if there is a way that we can start, again, with the whole collaboration piece of industry starting to work together and companies working together to perhaps build a network of business charging infrastructure, which can be prioritised, which can be booked, which can be scheduled into their work schedule with confidence that they're going to turn up and that's the amount of time that's going to be taken out of their work window. That would be a massive, massive move forward.
I like that a lot. I'm looking at the time, and I'm definitely, as I promised, questions from the audience. Have we got anybody here who would like to ask a question? We have a mic. I think we have, at the back there, actually, June, I think. Oh, one over there, that's good. And then Scott, oh, Scott, you're over there, yeah, good. Okay. You getting your steps in today, June? Yeah, fire away.
Hello there. So this is actually a really great point to my question, actually. And I've heard a lot around growth of charges and expansion, but I think a big issue that we found is customers have an issue around reliability, right? So what I would like to actually hear more of, actually, if possible, is what is the plan around reliability before we install more chargers? How can we give customers confidence that the next charger they're going to is going to be reliable, it's going to meet their needs, and subsequently, it's going to support their plans they've made for that journey? Because it's all good and we're having 1 million, but if the one isn't working for the end user, we've got a problem still.
Thank you. I think that's one for you, Akira.
I mean, safe, reliable, fast, convenient charging is absolutely what every customer tells us around, you know, doesn't matter where you go, right? So absolutely critical. Are we there yet as an industry? No, right? So I think there's been a lot of focus on that, and it does need to improve. Destination has to be 99 to 100% reliability and uptime. So, you know, I can certainly talk for Pulse. We've actually ripped and replaced over 1,500 aspects of our hardware in the last 18 months because, frankly, we weren't there from an uptime and reliability piece either, right? So directionally, for all USCs, rapid charging, we've got to be hitting 99, 100% by end of next year as an industry, right? So super amounts of investment are going in there. There have been generally some constraints in the last couple of years, hardware, components, frankly, Ukraine, COVID crisis, but there's no excuse really, right? The hardware's there. If we can install it and replace, the industry needs to move forward, and we will. Yeah.
No, good question. I think a question over in the middle here, June, as well. Yeah. Gentleman down there, thank you.
If I could just pick up in the meeting,
Yep.
something that's part of the consumer experience, so the government have consulted on a range of consumer experience issues, and reliability is one of them. So we'll be regulating for a 99% reliability from next year.
Oh, there you go then, right? Yeah, big stick.
So
Yep,
I'm
sir.
Dave Meek from Intertech. I've got a question about heavy-duty truck charging infrastructure. Trucks are starting to appear on the market right now, but there's very little infrastructure to support them. What are the main hurdles and solutions, do you think, for that breakthrough technology?
You want to do that? Yeah, that's a great question.
Sorry,
Yeah, the commercial vehicle arena, particularly heavy trucks, we're now finally seeing, you know, the commercial sector really coming in with choice of vehicles and charging. But the bigger vehicles, the higher challenge of, you know, high power charging, mega charging, how's that looking? What are the prospects for that?
So I think this is one of the areas of greater uncertainty. So I think it's taken a long time to get to a place where it's very clear that for the passenger vehicle market and increasingly for vans, electrification is the way forward. I think there is some question in the sort of heavier goods market whether the answer is electrification or hydrogen, or in the short term the sort of the biofuels, the HVOs. So I think as battery technology improves over time, it's looking more and more of a prospect that the HGVs will be electrified, but I think that's one of the areas that we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, but it definitely needs to happen. And my view is we've gone on the electric vehicle revolution the wrong way around. We should have started with commercial vehicles first, taxis, buses, vans and trucks. That's another matter. Scott, have we got any questions online, please?
Yes, loads of questions online. some that I definitely can't ask, but we'll come to a more specific one.
Go on, Scott.
One on EV fleet. So if all existing petrol pumps were 350 kilowatt chargers, would it be possible to cover a 100% EV fleet? So I guess it'd be good for Nina to give some reference to fleet managing, and then maybe Akira too.
From a volumetrics point of view, I will defer to the expert here. If we were able to put the charging points in every single petrol station that we have at the moment, can you imagine the fantastic network that we would have? We're able at the moment to sustain all of our travel with the network that already exists. I don't think that there would be any better way than to start by having that as an absolute starting point. So over to you. There's that little nugget for you.
I guess there's something about right speed for my need, but also what do customers really want, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, at home, on-the-go destination is what customers want. So I certainly charge at home. I charge, frankly, on-the-go and a destination, and when I drive my EV. There's a reality in terms of network size. There's about 8,000 petrol stations in the entire UK, right? Is that enough to meet the demand of everyone on EV? No. Actually, frankly, not if you look at the overall network and size we need to be, right? So broadly, about 30% of on-the-go charging in the future, 10, 20 years, will absolutely be on forecourt. So we need more than that. We need EV charging hubs, we need fleet hubs, we need to offer charging at home, and frankly, we need charging at destination like we announced with M&S. So absolutely, but that's not enough. Right?
Yep. You've got a few more, so
we'll pick one more, then there's a couple more in the room as well. Yep. So let's go for one about onshore wind. So will the freeing up of onshore wind planning aid the high-powered charger rollout? No pressure. Just wind.
So that's more in the BEIS sector than the DFT. I mean, all renewable energy is going to help with the electrification. I mean, we're expanding massively on the renewable energy side, and we need to.
Okay, we've got a question. Where's Jean? Yeah. Okay, got a question. Oh, okay, one over there, then we'll come over here.
Good morning. My name is Cecile from ChargeTrip. I think over the last few days, we heard it quite a couple of times that the same topics are coming back. I'm actually wondering, what will be your big topics for 2023?
Quick question, a quick answer to that, please, if you can. Just a quick one.
Big opportunity for 2023?
Yep.
To be honest with you, interim fuels as well as the electric, and looking to optimise the decarbonisation of HGVs, utilising HVO at the moment. I know it's not EV, but that is, we've all got to take interim steps.
Aaron, a quick one?
I think it's a local charging infrastructure. So we're launching our local charging infrastructure scheme next year. So there's going to be a massive expansion in that area, which is really exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to move from physical to digital. Right? We talk a lot about uptime, reliability, physical, hardware, LAN, etc. Next year and coming years, it's all going to be about digital. How do you optimize load management, energy management, smart link in, stop blackouts, and digital will be the topic in the next 2 years.
Very good. And then we've got Mike Potter just up there, please. I recognise you, even with the glaring lights, Mike. Hope you're impressed.
It's very good. I thought you should have some sunglasses, you guys, for this. So I've got a question about vans, particularly light commercial vans. It's a real challenge for SMEs particularly. With the rise in energy prices, now when we do whole life cost comparisons for those guys, that's coming out kind of level with diesel, right? So that's really put the brakes on adoption there. I don't know if there's anything in policy or any ideas around how we try to get that part of the OPEX to work for those people, because I think 30%, there's only 30% of people that are off-street parking. Even the guys that have it don't want to park their van on their drive because they very often want to put their car on there for low insurance. So just how do we get to that so that we can get a way of making that work?
Aaron, got any thoughts on that? Any creative accounting you can deliver?
Well, there's ongoing support in terms of grants for vans. I think making sure that there's sufficient charging infrastructure, and I know We saw Catherine from BVRLA earlier, making sure that we've got charging infrastructure that's suitable for vans as well is really important. But it's one, I mean, the cost of living crisis is a challenge for all of us, and electricity prices going up, obviously.
I think the build maybe I think we've got to move from, again, one-off transactions to sort of 5 or 10 year frames and frankly move maybe to software as a service or charging as a service. So certainly, I mean, from my perspective, or BP's, would be happy to invest in a fleet if we can actually try and create a longer term relationship with a fleet or van provider. And if we go for 5 to 10 year periods, then the actual price of energy may shift as well.
We've got time for one more question, and I recognise someone else. Sarah, so Sarah, your question.
Hi everyone, Sarah Sloman from Paythrough. So I'm the director of Future Fleet there, and constantly hear that Fleet have got a really hard time. So grateful that you're doing the on-the-go network expansion. What about VAT receipts, though? We need a swathe of better apps and better reconciliation. What's on the horizon for that?
Well, I
love that they point at you. You really don't want to answer this question. But do you have, BP Pulse have a way of downloading VAT receipts for drivers who use your on-the-go network?
We're trialling with 2 big fleet providers, 2 things. One is actually, can we do fleet at home billing and actually do it in a way that's seamless for our client to enable us to invoice and submit that for our partners at the home, but frankly also on the go and in their own depot. So they're trials at the moment. We'd like to integrate that into our digital platform in the midterm, but absolutely required, right? And again, I guess the wider questions, we've got to be able to provide the at-home, on-the-go depot in a seamless way under one system and have the invoice billing all in the same place.
Yeah. Note to self, by the way, have some water on for the speakers on the stage. Yeah. Oops, sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for all of your questions. I know we haven't got to all of the ones online. I'm sure we can get back to people with things on that. So I apologise if you're watching online and thinking, why didn't you ask my question? We had so many in the audience here as well. Panel, thank you very much. I know Nina's popped off for the moment, but she'll be back, I'm sure. Thank you for answering the questions. I'm sure you've got time for people afterwards. So after this, that would be good. But for now, if you'd like to give the panel two-thirds of my time.